In this video, we're diving into the ancient mound builder complex known as Kolomoki, a massive site in South Georgia that includes one of the largest platform pyramid mounds of the southeast United States. I'll take you along my visit and share with you what I learned on the ground, and then walk you through some of the fascinating discoveries I made while digging through old excavation reports and archives. This one got really interesting, so stick around, you're not going to want to miss this. So I was driving through South Georgia when I decided to make a pit stop at Kolomoki. The moment I arrived, the entire place just felt different. The dirt itself was almost glowing bright orange, nothing like the ground from up north. The trees and undergrowth also looked unfamiliar. The whole landscape had a quiet, distinct character, unlike any place I had ever been before. I only had limited time, so I headed straight to the museum to see what I could learn. The lady at the visitor center told me because of NAGPRA laws that the site was no longer allowed to display anything that came out of a burial, and because pretty much their entire collection came out of burials, there was nothing to show. She also mentioned that the artifacts were going to be sent to a native tribe in Oklahoma. Because I could not find any information in the museum, this pushed me into the archives to see if I could find any old excavation reports. Finally, after using the correct search terms, I was able to turn up something. A few newspaper articles, one that led me to the Smithsonian's Bureau of Ethnology annual report, and another that led me to an Alabama state history volume. They described artifacts that will sound familiar: mica discs, copper from the Great Lakes region, an iron hammer, and local reports of unusually large skulls found in the mounds. Now, if you follow my page, you will have noticed that these same reports show up time after time in mound builder excavations across the Mississippi River Valley, the Ohio River Valley, the Missouri River Valley, all over the eastern United States. We get these same type of reports. So let's start with the history of the people who built this place. Then we'll dive into the excavation reports themselves. The Kolomoki Mound site in Early County, southwest Georgia, near Blakely, is one of the largest and earliest major woodland period earthwork complexes in the southeastern United States. Built primarily between about AD 350 and 750 by Native American peoples of the Swift Creek and Weedon Island cultures. It featured a massive platform temple mound, Mound A, roughly 56 feet high, burial mounds, smaller ceremonial mounds, a central plaza, and a surrounding village. At its height, Kolomoki was likely one of the most populous settlements north of Mexico. Mounds A, D, and E form a central axis aligned with the sun at the spring equinox. Constructing Mound A alone required an estimated 2 million basket loads of earth. People lived around the mounds in semi-subterranean or pole-frame houses with woven thatched roofs. Centuries later, the 1820 Georgia Land Lottery redistributed Muskogee Creek lands in the area, opening the site to Euro-American settlement following the forced removal of indigenous peoples. The Mercer family later owned and farmed the land encompassing Kolomoki, with family graves on Mound G. In 1938, local civic groups acquired the property and donated it to the state, establishing Kolomoki Mounds State Historic Park.
I recently visited the ancient Kolomoki Mound complex near Blakely, Georgia. When I went into the museum, the staff told me that because of NAGPRA, they can no longer display anything that came from burials, only objects found on the surface. She explained that most of their collection had originally come from the mounds themselves, so there wasn't much left to see. That pushed me into the archives. I started digging for old excavation reports and early visitor accounts, and I hit pay dirt. What you're about to hear are tightened highlights from two of the most interesting early accounts I found, along with some of the earliest sketches and plates of the mounds. The first story comes from the 1872 annual report of the Smithsonian Institution. In a report by William McKinley on the mounds of Early County, Georgia, the detailed survey of one group was done by James N. Evans, the county surveyor. McKinley described the outer walls that once enclosed parts of the site near what was then called Kolomoki Creek on the Mercier plantation. These earthen walls ran for hundreds of yards and were strengthened at key points by bastions, projecting sections of the wall that stuck out like the corner towers of a fort. By the 1870s, the sections still visible stood only about 1.5 feet high in the woods and 15 inches or less in the cultivated fields. Their bases were roughly 50 feet wide, meaning the walls had spread outward over time, so that what was once a steeper embankment now formed a broad, gently sloping ridge of earth about 50 feet across at ground level. One of the oldest citizens in the county told him the walls had once been at least twice as high before erosion and farming wore them down. Along the walls and around the mounds, McKinley noted many fragments of carved pottery and arrowheads. He wrote, "I have also been informed that some of the facial bones of human skeletons have been taken from one of the mounds in the Mercier plantation, which are said to have been much larger than those of our own race, leaving the inference that the mound builders were almost of a giant stature. But this tradition may be the result of the natural tendency to indulge in the marvelous." Nearby, on a 21-acre section of land known as the Walnut Fork of Dry Creek, Evans mapped a dense cluster of 83 mounds. They ranged from a few inches to 10 feet high and from 15 to 100 feet across. Most were 30 to 40 feet in diameter. Many had raised parapets. Some tops were convex, others concave or flat. Human bones had been dug from several, leading McKinley to conclude they were burial places. An open space near a spring and pond, free of mounds, may have served as a parade ground or area for games. One larger mound here was considered unique and possibly used for sacrifice. A small stone idol was found on it. The whole group sat hidden under a grove of towering black walnut trees in an almost impenetrable swamp, so well concealed that even longtime residents had only recently learned of it. McKinley called the Great Pyramid of Kolomoki the only mound of its exact form in Georgia. The next story comes from a report published in the Evening Star of Washington, D.C. on October 28, 1951. In the early 1950s, University of Georgia archaeologist William H. Sears spent 2 years excavating at Kolomoki Mounds near Blakely, Georgia, working on a burial mound simply called Mound D, about 100 feet across and 23 feet high. His team uncovered one of the richest ceremonial complexes then known in the Southeast. Inside, they found the remains of roughly 100 people. At the center was a large tomb, once supported by stone slabs and logs, which Sears believed held an important priest chief. Around it lay 8 additional graves. Sears suggested these individuals may have been relatives or attendants sacrificed to accompany the leader, possibly first drugged with tobacco and then the grave goods were striking. Excavators recovered copper ornaments thought to come from near Lake Superior, pearls and conch shells from the Gulf of Mexico, large discs of mica, and what Sears suspected was hammered meteoric iron, the first such find reported in the region. The pottery was especially elaborate. Clay figures of birds, deer, opossums, panthers, wildcats, rattlesnakes, and humans. Many vessels had been deliberately broken or killed in a ritual believed to release their spirits for the afterlife. Sears described a sophisticated society of hundreds of pole and thatch houses clustered in political subdivisions, supported by corn, beans, and other crops, with a strong religious and political leadership capable of organizing large labor forces. He believed Mound D marked the final major ceremony at what may once have been the ceremonial center of a territory stretching across parts of Georgia and Florida.
We just got to the top of the platform pyramid mound, and this little guy was up here. I have no idea how he made it up here. Look at his colors.